And we're all reluctant to lose jurors, and I guess one alternative would be to see if this particular juror thinks that he would be available tomorrow. That is, whether he'd be better tomorrow, in which case we could consider adjourning and having him come in tomorrow.
Well, I think he really wanted. He wants to be part of this process, so he was hopeful that he would be better tomorrow. I just can't really say that his prediction would turn out to be true. The other thing is we now have 14 jurors upstairs who got here with some delays in the green line, and so it would require basically excusing them for the day, and we'd lose a full day of testimony. I think we can make a lot of progress today if we went forward.
Well, those are my thoughts.
Okay. So you'd rather, your preference then would be to lose a day and resume tomorrow in hopes he would be better?
I do think so.
Mr. Deacon, do you have any views?
I'm sort of torn, Your Honor. I am ready to go.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I have to say that I share Mr. Shapiro's concern. I think neither of us wants to be in a position of having to retry this case.
I just feel like the chance, it just seems so remote to me, as in it's never happened to me.
Understood, Your Honor.
So,
I'm obviously, I'll trust the court's judgment on this. I just, I'm not, I don't feel strongly one way or the other, so.
I think if there was any other juror that didn't feel well, we would certainly bend over backwards and accommodate and take off a day or even two to make sure that juror recovered. So I don't want to lose any more, and I would do everything possible to avoid that from happening. But I do think this is a pretty safe bet that we're going to have plenty of jurors to finish this case. So in the exercise of my discretion, I'm going to excuse the juror in seat number 14 and go ahead and proceed with trial this morning.
Just note my objection.
Okay. Are we ready to go?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, we'll bring down the jury.
All parties are present and 14 jurors are present.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As you see, juror number 14 is not here. If you recall from Friday, he wasn't feeling well. We were hoping the weekend would solve that. In fact, he felt much worse. And so while he was very unhappy with the prospect of not continuing, I've gone ahead and exercised my discretion to excuse him with the hopes that all the rest of you stay well. Obviously, is there any issue, call us up and we'll deal with it, but we don't want to lose anybody else. Before we get started, I do want to make sure you followed my instructions. You haven't talked about this case with anyone. You haven't done any independent investigation of the law or the facts. Specifically, you have not used the internet to look up any information, and I've told you why that's so important. I also instructed you to refrain from listening or reading any news reports, and if there's anything else that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial, it would be important for you to let me know. I have no indication that anything has occurred. But if you have followed my instructions and there's nothing that would affect your ability to be fair and impartial, please raise your hand to indicate that. Thank you. So with that, Mr. Deacon, are you ready to call your next witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts called Daniel Herman.
Testimony you shall give to the court and jury, the issue now pending between the Commonwealth and the defendant of the bar should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God.
I do.
Have a seat, please.
Go ahead, sir.
Good morning, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning, Trooper Herman.
Good morning, sir.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jurors and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Good morning, jurors. My name is Daniel Herman, spelled Herman.
How are you employed?
Currently a trooper with the Mass State Police.
And what's your current assignment with the Massachusetts State Police?
Currently assigned to the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office in the State Police Homicide Unit.
And what are your responsibilities in the State Police Homicide Unit?
To investigate murders, unattended deaths, and other crimes in Suffolk County.
Can you please briefly go over your educational background?
Yes. Prior to coming to the State Police, I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Massachusetts. I was a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army, and I worked as a deputy sheriff for the Suffolk County Sheriff's Department prior to my employment.
When did you graduate from college?
In 2004.
And you said you were a staff sergeant in the U.S. Army. How long were you in the United States Army?
Approximately 8 years. Half of that time was in the reserves.
And while you were in the reserves, where were you working?
I was working for the Suffolk County Sheriff's
For how long?
Department, approximately 6 years.
And when did you join the Massachusetts State Police?
In 2004, sir.
Where were you assigned within the State Police? Where were you assigned?
I have been assigned to field barracks at the South Boston Barracks, at the Concord Barracks, and for 7 years I was assigned to the Attorney General's Office, State Police Detective Unit.
And what were your responsibilities there?
I investigated child pornography crimes. I was a member of the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, and a variety of other sex offenses, frauds, etc.
And when did you join the Suffolk Detective Homicide Unit?
Approximately 2.5 years ago. It was in, I believe, February 2015.
In June,
Excuse me.
In June of 2015, did you become involved in the investigation into the death of an unknown baby girl or toddler girl?
Yes, I did.
And how did you first become involved?
On June 25th, 2015, I was on call and on duty in Chelsea, Massachusetts, where our offices are. And I received a call from Captain Russolillo, the A Troop duty officer.
And how do you spell his last name?
It's a tough one. Russcillio, I believe.
And where were you? As a result of that conversation, what did you do?
It was reported to me by Captain Russolillo that there was a baby in a bag reported in Winthrop on Deer Island.
What did you do?
I immediately responded to Deer Island. The general area was Taft's Ave on a bayside beach in Winthrop.
What did you find? What was going on there when you got there?
Upon arrival, there was a large-scale response. Winthrop Police Department was there, Winthrop Fire Department, several troopers from the Revere State Police Barracks, and the ambulance was on scene. The child had already been pronounced deceased by EMT Stephen DeRogers, and it was a large-scale response. I was met by Chief Delahunty of the Winthrop Police Department.
And again, spelling test, I'm going to ask you to spell his last name.
I believe Dellante.
Was your attention drawn to a particular area by other responders?
Yes.
Where was that?
So on a bayside beach, approximately 10 feet or so from the water line, there was a plastic bag. It was near the high tide mark, and the bag was, when I arrived, it was partially opened, and what I observed to be a pink patterned blanket was partially visible from the bag.
Could you see anything from inside the bag other than the pink patterned blanket when you first saw it?
Not on my initial response, no.
What did you do?
I spoke with the other first responders that were on scene. We canvassed the entire area and spoke with several witnesses that were on scene, and eventually we opened the bag and I viewed the contents.
What did you see when you opened the bag?
Upon opening the bag, I observed what looked to me to be the little hands and little feet of what looked like a 3-year-old little girl.
And was the bag, when you say you opened the bag, had the bag been, I assume from you saying that you could see the blanket, that the bag was partially open when you got there?
Correct.
Did you have to open it further to see what you saw?
Yes.
And when you saw the hands and feet of a child, what did you do?
We did this in the presence of responding medical examiners, personnel, and we observed fully the body. We looked for any obvious signs of trauma or deformity, presence of blood. We also noticed that the body appeared to be wrapped in two blankets. Two blankets were present with the body, as well as two black plastic trash bags.
Did you see any sign of obvious overt injury or blood?
No, we did not.
Were you able to examine, well, let me first ask you.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to, in a minute, permit the display of certain photographs. As we pointed out in jury selection, these photographs may be disturbing, may arouse emotions in you, and I would just remind you that it's important you base your verdict not on sympathy or emotion, but your verdict must be the product of reason and your objective assessment of the evidence. I have concluded that these photos do constitute evidence, but again, I just remind you while you may feel some emotion at viewing these photos, it's important that you base your verdict on reason instead. So with that instruction, Mr. Deacon.
Thank you, Your Honor. Trooper, on your screen, I think, should be a photograph. Do you recognize what that's a photograph of?
Yes, I do.
What's a photograph of?
It's a photograph of the child we named Baby Doe that was found on the beach on that day.
Trooper, there is in this photograph a yellow placard with a black 1 on it. Was that plaque, well, let me ask you, aside from that placard, is this a fair and accurate depiction of how the unknown girl appeared to you when you opened that bag up further that day?
Yes, sir.
I should have asked you this before, but about what time of day was it that you went there?
I received the call just prior to 1 p.m.
And how long did it take you to arrive?
15 or 20 minutes.
Trooper, I'm going to show you a second photograph. Do you recognize what that's a photograph of?
I do.
And what's that a photograph of?
It's a closer, zoomed-in image of the child as she appeared when we opened up the bag.
And is that a fair and accurate depiction of how she appeared when you saw her and opened up the bag and removed
Yes, sir.
the items covering her head and face?
Yes, sir.
This time I move to introduce these as the next two sequential exhibits, Your Honor.
Subject to the objection that was made at the sidebar that I overruled, I'll admit it. 89 and 90.
Publishing exhibit 89. The jury, Your Honor. Sorry. And once again, Detective, that placard that's depicted there, was that there when you first got there?
No, sir. That was put there by our State Police Crime Scene Services personnel.
And what's the purpose of putting placards like that down?
The purpose of putting those placards is to identify the particular photograph and area later on for crime scene analyzing.
Publishing exhibit 90. Detective, believe you testified, well, if you could, because I'm not positive you testified, describe, if you would, the degree or the state of the girl's body when you removed the items covering her.
I would describe the state of the body as in advanced stages of decomposition. There was also skin slippage significantly indicating that the body had spent some time in the water.
Do you see evidence of the skin slippage in this photograph?
Yes.
Where?
On the child's abdomen, torso area, and there's also significant skin slippage on the hands.
For the record, Your Honor, I've removed the exhibit from the display at this point. Detective, I believe you indicated that you located the bag, or the bag was located just below the high tide line. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how did you determine the high tide line?
There were high tide markings indicated on the rocks on the beach itself, indicated by floating debris.
When you say floating debris, is it actually floating when you saw it?
No, just debris that's deposited on the beach, weeds, little pieces of trash, things that are just sort of indicate a line in the sand.
Trooper, was there news coverage of your work? First of all, how long did you stay on the beach all told that day?
From the beach, we requested the assistance of cadaver sniffing dogs from the state police. Troopers Kenny and Trooper Frechette responded.
Let me stop you. Just for now, how long were you there all told?
Until approximately 2 a.m. the next morning.
And was there news coverage of your discovery, the discovery that had been made and the work that was going on there on the beach during the rest of that day?
Significant news coverage, yes.
How do you know that?
There was a news helicopter hovering over the area.
And did you learn from any other source of news coverage that afternoon and evening?
Several acquaintances. I was contacted by. I have 3 sisters.
People contacted you about the case that afternoon?
Several.
You, I believe, had begun in a previous answer to describe some of the steps that you took initially, I gather, to try to. Well, what was the purpose of your investigation at that point?
I wanted to make sure there was no additional evidence on that beach or in the area or in the water.
What was your goal in conducting that investigation for evidence? What were you trying to do?
A line search is conducted to find out if there's anything in the area. We also deployed the state police marine unit.
I'm sorry, I'm asking a broader question. Were you trying to identify the girl?
Yes.
And were you also trying to determine whatever you could about the circumstances of her death?
Yes.
Okay. So please, if you would, describe the steps that you took in order as much as you can, and I may ask you some follow-up questions about those steps.
Yes, sir. From the scene, we also conducted a drift analysis from the United States Coast Guard. The investigatory section, we requested what they referred to as a 24 and a 48-hour reverse drift analysis to potentially find out where the body had drifted from.
I'll ask you some more questions about the drift analysis, but for now I want to take you back to, I think you mentioned that you brought canine in and did a line search. So I'll ask you to discuss what was involved in each of those processes.
In the line search, troopers from the State Police Revere Barracks, assisted by several Winthrop Police Department police officers, we conducted a line search where we walk in a line and we pick up any piece of evidence or anything that we think may be evidentiary in that area.
And where did you conduct that?
On the beach and in the wooded surrounding areas around Deer Island.
And did you locate anything through the line search that appeared to you to be connected to the death?
No, we did not.
I believe you indicated that you were there was a canine were brought to that location. What was the purpose of that?
Purpose of that was to identify any further evidence or any further victims. And we also conducted this search at the next low tide, which was 1 a.m.
And were the dogs did they uncover any evidence or any additional cadavers?
No, sir.
Were there any other efforts made to search for other evidence or other bodies?
The attempt to identify was immediately requested through the state police contacts at the Commonwealth Fusion Center.
I'll ask you a little bit more about that in a moment, but was any effort made to search underwater off the beach?
Yes, the state police dive team, the underwater recovery unit, was contacted and summoned to the scene.
And did they locate any relevant evidence?
No, sir.
Now, you were about to talk about a request to identify. What is a request to identify?
A request to identify is something that's sent to all law enforcement in the area, in Massachusetts, for that matter, and also hospitals. It's just a blast email and notifications that are sent out in case there's anybody that's been missing or anything that law enforcement should be aware of within the last 48 hours.
And you did that from the beach?
Yes, sir.
Did that yield any, immediately, right then, that afternoon, evening, nighttime, did it yield any results?
No, sir.
Were there any other efforts made to search either the scene or the surrounding area for evidence or information?
Not that I recall right now, sir.
Did anybody, for example, canvass neighbors, speak to neighbors?
Yes, significant neighborhood canvassing continued on that day and days after.
And did that neighborhood canvassing yield any results?
No, sir.
Was there any effort made to enlist the aid of the media? I think you had said there was media coverage. Was any effort made to enlist the aid of the media?
Yes.
What was that?
The collaboration between the state police media section and the district attorney's office, press office, was made to release certain information and photos in an attempt to identify this little girl.
Photos of what?
So, if I could go back to the beach, from the beach I contacted the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. I was able to provide the center with pictures of the little girl's face, and including pictures of the blanket. And we requested a composite to be created. I spoke with Carol Schweitzer, who's a senior forensic case manager.
And when you say a composite photograph, how would you do a composite photograph on a partially decomposed face?
It's a digital image that's created by forensic artists at the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. It took us about a day to get it back, but a forensic artist, Christy Andrews, was able to provide us that image.
And is that the image that the jury's already seen in the notification, the baby doe notifications that were subsequently widely disseminated?
That's correct, sir.
You said it took you about a day to get it back, the image back. Did you wait a day to put out the media advisory? Did you wait to have that picture to put out the media advisory?
As soon as we had a composite image that was provided to our media units.
I guess what I'm asking is, was there a media notification that went out before the one that had the computer-generated image?
Yes, sir. There was a press release.
And that was issued when?
I believe on the same day. That day,
25th?
June 25th, 2015.
And that was something you were working on from the beach?
Yes, sir.
I believe you also indicated that you asked for a drift analysis. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And was it actually a reverse drift analysis?
Yes.
Is that a distinction that you understood at the time?
It was explained to me briefly, yes.
And what was your understanding, or what is your understanding? Well, let me ask you that. What was your understanding of what a reverse drift analysis does, what it's for? I believe the original reason for doing a drift analysis is to identify missing persons at sea. In this situation, we were requesting that this body that was found, if it had drifted from somewhere, if they could indicate to us where in the harbor or where it had potentially drifted from. And who did you approach to do the reverse drift analysis?
Contacts within the state police put me in touch with a investigatory person. I believe it was Chief Drake at the United States Coast Guard office in Boston.
And you asked him to do a 24 to 48 hour reverse drift analysis?
That's correct, sir.
What does that mean?
It's would indicate the drift patterns of the ocean between 24 hours and 48 hours.
before the discovery of the body.
That's correct.
And where did you get, let me ask you this, to do a reverse drift analysis, are you required to indicate a potential time frame that you want analyzed?
Yes, sir.
And how did you come up at that time with 24 to 48 hours?
We wanted it immediately 24 hours, but the reason we requested 48 hours is there was an account from the scene, also that the...
As to what the account was, I will sustain that objection.
Did you receive information from an emergency medical technician that created that 24 to 48 hour window?
Yes, sir.
And did they provide you with a drift analysis?
Yes, they did.
Were they able, using a reverse drift analysis, to pinpoint a location from which a child's body in a bag might have drifted?
Objection. This is obviously hearsay.
Well, he can answer yes or no.
Did they pinpoint a location?
No, sir.
Instead, did they give you a wide variety of locations from which a body might have drifted?
Objection to obviously hearsay information.
I think he can answer that question, so that's overruled.
No, sir.
They didn't give you a wide range of places where it might have drifted from?
Objection again to being.
You can answer overruled.
It was not specific, sir.
And subsequently, to prepare for trial, did you meet again with the U.S. Coast Guard?
Yes, I did.
And did you ask them to conduct further reverse drift analyses?
Yes.
And those drift analyses, did you ask them to start from June 24th?
Yes, sir.
Why?
There was an account from the scene that
Objection to an account from the scene.
Okay, I think he received certain information.
Did you receive certain information?
certain information that the
You can't say what it is. Just, did you receive information at the scene that led you to ask the Coast Guard to conduct a reverse drift analysis starting from June 24th?
Yes, sir.
At the end of, when you left the beach, I can't remember if you said 1 or 2 a.m.
Approximately 2 a.m.
When you left the beach at 2 a.m., had you identified baby Doe?
No, sir.
Was an autopsy conducted of baby Doe?
Yes, sir.
Do you know when it was conducted?
It was conducted that next morning,
So June 26th.
June 26, 2015.
Did you attend the autopsy?
A trooper from my office covered the autopsy.
So you did not attend the autopsy?
No, sir.
Who's the trooper who attended the autopsy?
Trooper Anthony Yalestock.
And if you could spell his last name.
Alestock.
And what were you doing the following day and in the days that followed that?
I requested criminalist testing and forensic testing. State police chemists were contacted, and the evidence recovered from the scene was transported, and all that testing was requested from our state police chemists.
Did you, and I should have asked you this earlier, but since you brought up the evidence that was recovered, did you have a chance to examine the bag in which baby Doe was found?
Yes, sir.
And was there more than one bag involved in the bag that she was contained in?
Yes, sir.
How many bags were involved?
There were 2 plastic bags involved.
And how were they fastened? Were they fastened?
Yes, sir.
How was that?
They were knotted.
And what kind of knot was it, if you remember?
It was, if you can imagine, a black plastic trash bag knotted at the top.
And were you able to make any observations about how loosely or tightly the bags were knotted?
The bags appeared to be tightly knotted.
What did you send for processing to the criminalistics department?
The clothing that the child was dressed in.
When you say clothing, we saw a picture of leggings. Was there any other clothing?
There was just a pair of polka-dotted leggings. The child was not wearing anything from the waist up.
And what else was sent?
The 2 plastic bags and the 2 blankets.
What other steps did you take after that?
Through the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, we were put in touch with national contacts and outside labs. We requested isotope testing to be done on the child's teeth enamel and a section of her hair.
And what is isotope testing?
Isotope testing tests the isotopes, the hydrogen levels in the teeth and the hair to possibly indicate elevation where the person may have come from, or perhaps drinking water with a drinking water source of the child.
And this was in an effort to identify who she was?
Yes, and geographically where she came from.
Did you conduct commission additional testing to be done?
Yes. A pollen testing analysis was requested. We had assistance from the Customs and Border Patrol labs in Texas. They tested a pollen that was found microscopically in the baby doe's hair. It indicated several types of pollen, and that report was forwarded back to us and shared with local experts in this area.
And what were you hoping to be able to determine from the pollen testing?
We were hoping to confirm a geographic region where this child came from.
I believe you've already testified that you received a composite diagram from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, the computer simulation of what the girl might have looked like in life.
Yes, sir.
What did you do with that once you got it?
That was widely distributed with the assistance from our media relations unit. It was distributed all over social media. Towards the end of the case, I believe it had been viewed over 50 million times.
Did you make it, first of all, were you able to ascertain whether there was any surveillance cameras that trained on the beach itself?
We attempted to retrieve them. There was no video camera pointing at the beach.
Did you try to obtain any surveillance video in connection with the case?
Yes.
What was that?
On the routes and the access roads to Deer Island, we obtained several video camera footages. They were retrieved by, we have received the hard drives and made copies of them. The video camera footage indicating anything that traveled on the road to and from.
And why was it that you wanted to know about travel on the road if the baby was found on the beach?
We wanted to keep our options open in case there was any possibility that the child had been deposited on the beach.
When you say deposited, you mean?
By land, by vehicle.
And was that surveillance video reviewed?
Yes, sir.
Did it indicate anything suspicious or that seemed to be connected with baby doe?
No, sir.
Were there any, did you make any efforts to use technological data or information to try to identify baby doe?
Yes, sir.
Or how she got there? What was that?
I wrote a warrant for what I would refer to as a tower dump. A tower dump indicating any cell phones that were used in the vicinity of that area. For 48 hours, I requested all the phone numbers in that area to be captured.
And did you receive a response to that?
Yes, sir.
And did that yield any leads as to the identity of the child?
No, sir.
Was there any, the next day or in days that followed, but specifically the next day, was there any further effort to examine either the beach or the area off the beach?
Additional canvassing was conducted, and the next day there was also an additional dive during daylight hours. A state police underwater recovery unit was asked to dive and research the area.
And why were they asked to do that again?
An attempt to identify further evidence.
And was there any evidence revealed as a result of that dive?
No, sir.
Did you or troopers working under your direction conduct, I know you said there were additional neighbor canvasses, I think you said. Were there any efforts to interview anyone else?
Yes, sir.
Who's that?
There were interviews conducted on local pediatric clinics, several pediatricians in the area, hospitals, and we followed up on several other leads. There were several tips that began coming in to our phone lines. Additionally, a 24-hour tip line was also set up.
There appears to be there in the area of Deer Island, is there a plant of some kind there near the beach?
Yes, sir.
What kind of plant is that?
The area where Baby Doe was found is actually owned by the Massachusetts Water Resource Authority. So contact was made with Victor L'Esperance, a plant manager there, and interviews were conducted with MWRA employees. Also, contractor lists were gathered, and additional interviews and follow-ups were conducted with MWRA personnel. Did the interviews with MWRA personnel yield any leads? No, sir. You said that, well, let me ask you this. Was there any other investigation based on findings from the child's body? Yes. During the autopsy, it was identified that the child had pierced ears, and additional attempts were made to identify local businesses that would pierce ears of an approximate 2 or 3-year-old. Claire's, etc., is a mall store in the area, and I worked with the corporate security from Claire's, etc., and I requested customer waivers going back approximately 4 years for any child in the area that had or child under the age of 3 that had their ears pierced.
And what did you do with that information once you got it?
I had several lists that I was accumulating, and these were secured. They were managed by myself, and I also had assistance from a case manager from the Violent Fugitive Apprehension Section in the State Police, Mr. Paul Pellegrino. This information was shared with Paul Pellegrino and Carol Schweitzer from the National Center, and the three of us collaborated on maintaining and cross-referencing these lists.
And were they investigated, meaning that people go out and talk to the families whose children had their ears pierced? When it came to the ear piercing, if that person showed up on another list, then yes, indeed, they would be interviewed. The ear piercing lists were held to corroborate against other lists that we were accumulating. Were there other investigations that were the result of information gleaned from the child's body? Not that I can recall at this time. Let me ask you, was there any investigation into dental records? Oh, yes, sir. Apologize. During the autopsy, a forensic odontologist also checked the body, checked the child's teeth. There was a possible presence of dental sealant on the child's teeth. So for approximately 2 weeks, several area dentists, specific to pediatric dentists, were contacted. We were hoping to identify records of young children who had dental sealant applied. We eventually learned that there was not sealant on the child's teeth. It was a false lead due to decalcification of the teeth. What about, were there any leads generated from the child's clothing? Yes, sir. Please describe what that was. The leggings that Baby Doe was wearing, there was a polka-dotted pair of leggings. They were size 4T, and it was the brand was Circo. I learned that was a Target brand, and troopers in my office assisted in obtaining records from Target. We were able to obtain transaction history, excuse me, for this item being purchased. We learned that these leggings were part of a 2-piece set. It was sold in Target between October 2014 and February 2015. It was a 2-piece set that was sold in the Northeast during that time. We requested records, and we were provided records on all of the credit card, EBT, and debit transactions for that outfit. What about cash transactions? We did not obtain cash transactions. And did what was done with those, once you got the information about those transactions, what did you do with them?
This was another lead sheet that we created. If we identified local stores, we prioritized the closest stores in Suffolk County, and troopers would respond to that home, and we would attempt an interview and attempt to identify that outfit.
The home of whom?
The home of the person who purchased that outfit. You should also state that we had to subpoena individually every individual credit card purchase. We had the assistance of the Special Prosecutions Unit from the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office.
Trooper, was there any effort made to use DNA to identify Baby Doe?
A DNA standard was created and shared with the University of North Texas.
Let me stop you for 1 second. How was the DNA standard created?
I believe it was, I'd have to refer to lab analysts for the technical
No, I don't mean that. I mean, where did Baby Doe's DNA come from? Where did you get a sample? How did you get a sample of Baby Doe's DNA?
The body, sir.
And that was something done at autopsy?
Yes, sir.
And what was the purpose of sending the DNA to the University of North Texas?
We wanted to check if her DNA matched any known missing persons. We also matched against the CODIS.
What's CODIS?
CODIS is a criminal offender database where known offenders and their DNA profiles are stored.
And did that produce any results? The sending it to the missing persons database at the University of North Texas?
No, sir.
You've mentioned several times a tip line that was set up. What exactly was set up in order for the public to provide information if they felt they had some?
The tip line was set up, a text line and a 24-hour hotline where anyone that had tips or anything to share to help us identify Baby Doe could call and speak with a trooper. And
were those calls and tips, were they recorded? I don't necessarily mean audio recorded, but did someone keep track of them in some fashion?
Yes, sir. We created a spreadsheet. We just refer to it as our tip sheet, and every named lead, any child that we actually had a name, is this possibly that little girl? We identified as much information as we could, and well-being checks were immediately conducted. We had the assistance of detectives all over Suffolk County assisting with these well-being checks.
And did you have assistance from detectives in other jurisdictions?
Yes, sir. This case got considerable attention, and we had assistance from Winthrop, Chelsea, Revere, Quincy, Boston, Everett, all of the surrounding communities, the detectives. It became everyone's case.
What about jurisdictions outside of eastern Massachusetts? Were there investigators or detectives involved in tracking down leads in other states?
Yes, sir. By the time we identified Baby Doe, there were well over 300 names on this tip sheet. Of those 300 names, at least 150 of them required a physical well-being check from a trooper or a detective going to that house and checking on the child.
And explain, I think you just anticipated the next part of my question, but what was involved in the well-being checks?
To make sure that the child being called into us was safe.
And you said that there were over 300 children's names that had been provided to you, and over 150 required well-being checks. For the other roughly 150 or so, how did you determine that they were not, in fact, Baby Doe?
Either there was known DNA standards, something concrete to rule that person out, or it was somebody that had been identified, or a physical description of a child that we knew was not our Baby Doe. These well-being checks were conducted in 28 states and 6 countries.
I believe you indicated there were some cases where there were known DNA standards.
Yes, sir.
So how did that work? When a child who was on your list had a known DNA standard, what would be done with that DNA?
That DNA standard was forwarded directly to our state police lab, and with the assistance from state police chemists, we were able to rule those individual leads out.
Do you know, all told, how many leads were investigated? So I'm not just asking about well-being checks, but investigated in any way.
It would be well over 300.
And who was involved? Well, and there were troopers or other detectives involved in each one of those?
That's correct.
Did any of those lead you to the identity of Baby Doe?
No, sir.
Trooper, just briefly, I apologize. Can I show you what's been marked Exhibit 2 in this case? Do you recognize what that's a photograph of?
Yes.
Oh, sorry. What's that a photograph of?
It's a photograph of the beach, the Bayside Beach in Winthrop on Deer Island.
And do you see the area where the body in the bag was when you found it?
Yes. On the left side of the screen, there's a white sheet visible.
So if you could just circle that with your finger, if you just push nice and hard on the screen, and it'll circle. So may the record reflect that witnesses identified what appears to be a white sheet to the middle of the photo, just off to the left. I'm going to show you Exhibit 1 and ask you what that's a picture of.
This is a picture just from another angle of a hill that's behind the area. It's a picture of Deer Island, just another angle of the beach.
And you've indicated that you saw indicators from discarded weeds or detritus from the water that on the beach. Do you see those on this diagram?
Yes, sir.
And if you could circle the best area where you see them. The record reflects that witnesses identified an area of what appears to be sea wash to the right side, the very far right side of the diagram in the middle. And you indicated that you saw the body or the bag below the highest of those lines that day?
Yes, sir.
I'm just going to show you Exhibit 3. And what's that a view of?
This is a zoomed-in image of the sheet that was covering Baby Doe.
And if you could just circle that. And may the record reflect the witnesses identified a white sheet area just to the right of the middle of the photograph. Trooper, have you brought with you, you indicated that there was leggings that was recovered from Baby Doe's body, as well as blankets and trash bags. Have you brought those with you today?
Yes, I did.
Could you please produce those? May the witness, I should have asked, may the witness step down to...
Yeah.
describe, if you would, what you're holding up in a nice loud voice because you're off the microphone. It's okay.
I'm holding up the pair of polka dotted leggings that were found on the victim, on the child that we identified or found on the beach that day. They are a size 4T, and the brand is Circo.
And Detective, I see, if you could show the front and back briefly. And if you show the front, there appears to be on the knee of the front, the left knee, there's a cutout, what appears to be a tear or a cutout portion. Was that cutout when you found Baby Doe on the beach?
No, sir.
And do you know why there's a cutout there now?
This would be a section of the pants that was removed and sent to a lab for pollen testing.
And if you could return those to their bag, and we'll ask that be marked the next sequential exhibit.
Exhibit 91.
And if you could, Trooper, please display for the jurors each of the blankets. Could you tell, Trooper, from your examination of the body when you opened the bag, which of the two blankets was closer to Baby Doe's body?
No.
Okay. Then if you would just display, you're holding now what appears to be essentially a zebra print blanket. And is that one of the two blankets that you found inside the bag?
Yes, sir.
Ask that actually, if you could put that aside and then show the other blanket. And in each case, you're holding the blankets up folded. Is it possible to hold them up unfolded, or at least this one unfolded?
Sir.
If you could show front, both sides. Ask that these be marked next to sequential exhibits, right?
I bring no objection. All of it done.
Trooper, could you please display for the jury the two trash bags in which Baby Doe's body was found?
I'm going to do them one at a time.
And the trash bag that you're displaying appears to be cut in several locations. Are those cuts, well, to the extent that you know, did you make at least some of those cuts?
We pulled the bag open. Prior to my arrival, the bag was partially opened and cut by the responding witness.
And other than the one cut which you attributed to the responding witness, did it have other cuts in it at that time?
To my recollection, the bag, at least one of the bags, was sort of beaten up, sort of roughed up a little bit.
And were you able to preserve the knotting on that bag? You said it was a tightly knotted.
Not this one. This one, the knot appears to be during the analysis of the bag, the knot was opened up.
And just so we're clear, was this one knot with two bags as a part of the knot, or was each bag separately knotted?
I believe each bag was separately knotted.
Can you show us, display for the jury, the other bag? And was the knotting preserved on that bag?
No, sir.
Could you ask that these be marked next to sequentially to the drum?
There being no objection, those are admitted.
No, you may resume the stand. Thank you. Trooper, did you continue to work on this case throughout its existence?
Yes, sir.
And at some point, did you receive a lead that was different from any of the other leads that you had received in terms of its well, did you receive a more significant lead?
Yes, I did.
When was that?
September 17th, 2015.
And that was a Thursday?
Yes, sir.
How did you receive the lead? Just how did it begin?
I received a call from my sergeant, Sergeant Scott Holland.
And did he, just yes or no, did he give you information?
Yes, sir.
As a result of that information, what did you do?
I responded to Roxbury District Court.
And what did you find when you got there?
I met and interviewed a gentleman named Michael Sprinsky.
Had you ever met Michael Sprinsky before that day?
No, sir.
Did you know anything about Michael Sprinsky before that day?
I did not.
Where did the interview take place?
The interview took place on the second floor in a conference room at that courthouse.
Was the interview recorded in some way?
Yes, it was digitally recorded.
And do you recall approximately how long the interview lasted?
Approximately 30 minutes.
And during the course of that interview, did Mr. Sprinsky give you anything?
Yes.
What was that?
He provided me his cell phone.
Is that something you had asked him for?
Yes.
And did he show you anything on his cell phone during the course of the interview?
Yes.
What did he show you?
He scrolled through his texts, and he showed me the text that he had been communicating, and I took several photographs of these texts also.
Was that with his permission?
Yes, sir.
And when you asked him to give you his phone?
Yes.
And he gave it to you?
Yes, sir.
Did he express any hesitation, reluctance, anything like that?
No, sir.
What did you do with his phone?
I secured it as evidence.
And ultimately later, what did you do with it?
It was transported to the forensic lab at the Suffolk District Attorney's Office, and a forensic examination was done on that phone. Did you take action based on the information that Mr. Sprinsky had given you? Yes, sir.
What action did you take first?
I contacted Lieutenant Bob Murphy.
Is he your commanding officer?
Yes, sir.
And what did you do next?
Lieutenant Bob Murphy and I agreed to immediately meet at an address in Dorchester at 115 Maxwell Street.
And where had you gotten that address from?
That address was provided to me by Michael Sprinsky.
As you went to that address, did you receive information from any other person or agency?
Yes, sir.
From whom?
While responding to that address, I contacted DCF.
And did they provide, just yes or no, did they provide you with information?
Yes, sir.
And did that pertain to residence addresses?
Correct.
How long did it take you to get to 115 Maxwell Street?
Approximately 15 minutes.
What did you do when you got there?
I met with Lieutenant Murphy, and we approached the front door vestibule of the building, and we knocked and attempted to conduct a well-being check.
What was your purpose in conducting a well-being check?
To try to identify the occupants and to check on the well-being of a child or other children or occupants of that apartment.
Was there a particular child you were looking for at that time?
Yes.
Who?
The name Bella Bond was provided to me.
And was this a well-being check like the other well-being checks that you've described having been done on this case over the period of several months?
Yes, the information was a little bit more specific.
Understanding that you may have thought differently about it perhaps, but in terms of your procedure, was this same or different from all the other leads you had looked into?
It was the same.
Were you able to get into the apartment to do the well-being check?
After contacting the management company for the building, yes.
Why'd you have to contact the management company for the building?
We couldn't get through the vestibule. We were outside the building, and we needed to gain access into the apartment and into the building itself.
So you couldn't get into the building?
No, sir.
How long did it take Wynn Management for you to get there?
Approximately 15 or 20 minutes.
And what happened when they got there?
When they got there, representative from the building management company had keys and opened the doors for us, allowed us access into the apartment.
And what did you find when you got into the apartment?
Immediately upon coming through the door, we announced our presence, looked for any occupants of the apartment, but on the refrigerator was a picture of a little girl, and I also, what jumped out at me was a zebra print rug.
Was there anybody, when you did the well-being check, was there anybody in the apartment at all?
No, sir.
Did anything else attract your attention while you were doing the well-being check?
Yes, sir.
What was that?
While walking through the front bedroom, I identified there was clothing on the floor, and in plain view was a black tunic with a gold trim. I knew to be the second piece of the outfit, second piece of the Serco 4T outfit.
How long were you in the apartment at that point?
At that point, less than 5 minutes.
And what did you do?
Upon seeing that item, we immediately secured the apartment, notified other troopers in our unit, notified the district attorney's office, and I began writing a search warrant.
How long did it take you to write an application for a search warrant?
By the time it was approved, it took approximately 10 hours.
And were other troopers doing things while you were writing the application for a search warrant?
Yes, sir.
In particular, were other troopers looking for any individual or individuals?
Yes, sir.
Who?
The occupants we believed to be of the apartment.
Who was that?
Michael McCarthy and Rochelle Bond.
Were either of those individuals located that day, that is the 17th?
Michael McCarthy's location was identified, yes.
And where was that?
He was in a hospital room at Beth Israel Hospital.
And how was he located?
He was located after several interviews. We interviewed his father and canvassed the neighborhood. We also were doing some other things to identify. We requested emergency phone pings to be done on Rochelle Bond's phone and a phone believed to be owned by Michael McCarthy.
When you found, well, not you, but when troopers found Michael McCarthy at the Beth Israel Hospital, were they able to find an automobile connected to him?
His automobile was found at a different hospital.
Which hospital?
His automobile was found at Milton Hospital.
What, if anything, was done with respect to Mr. McCarthy when he was located at Beth Israel Hospital?
We were hoping to interview him. We could not interview him due to his medical condition, so a trooper was posted in that location.
At the Beth Israel Hospital?
At the Beth Israel Hospital, yes.
And you indicated that it took, and let me ask you, was a trooper there continuously after that?
Yes.
You indicated that it took you approximately 10 hours to obtain a search warrant. Once you obtained the search warrant, that was for 115 Maxwell Street?
Yes, sir.
Which apartment?
Apartment number 2.
And what did you do when you obtained that search warrant?
I immediately responded back to the apartment, and state police chemists were summoned to the scene, crime scene photographers, and assisting troopers and detectives. We met at that apartment, and a search was conducted.
And was that search, well, first of all, was the apartment, the apartment itself, was it documented in some way before the search?
Yes, sir.
How?
A video was taken of the apartment. Several photographs were also taken.
Who did that?
Crime Scene Services.
Did you participate in the search
Yes.
from start to finish?
Not for the entire search. When the search had begun, during the search is when we identified that Michael McCarthy was at the Beth Israel Hospital. I left the apartment at that time and responded immediately to the hospital.
During the course of the search, was someone assigned to collect and record evidence?
Yes, sir.
And who's that?
Trooper Anthony Ailstock was the assigned evidence officer for that location.
How long did you stay at the Beth Israel Hospital?
We were there for approximately 40 minutes.
And then where did you go?
We met an individual in the lobby, and we went from there to our offices in Chelsea.
Who's that individual?
Kathleen Richards.
And you met her in the lobby?
Yes.
What did you do next?
We met her in the lobby, identified ourselves. We had a brief conversation with her, and she agreed to come back to our offices in Chelsea to conduct an interview.
Was she interviewed?
Yes.
Who interviewed her?
I did, with Lieutenant Bob Murphy.
And approximately how long was that interview?
Approximately an hour.
And during the course of that interview, did she provide you with any items?
Yes.
What did she give you?
She provided me with 2 cell phones.
Did she identify them for you?
Yes.
And as whose?
One phone was belonging to Michael McCarthy. The other phone was hers.
What did you do after interviewing Ms. Richards?
The phones were secured as evidence, later transported to our forensic lab, and I gave Ms. Richards a ride.
Where to?
Germantown in Quincy.
Did you do anything further that night, or about what time was it when you dropped her off in Quincy?
Probably close to 2 o'clock in the morning.
Did you do anything further that night?
We had ongoing requests through Metro PCS and emergency phone ping, GPS locator pings being conducted on 2 phones.
When you say 2 phones, whose phones?
Michael McCarthy's phone and Rochelle Bond's phone.
And you were still pinging Michael McCarthy's phone?
We still were. We wanted to make sure that that was the phone that we actually had, but yes.
And were you able to locate Ms. Bond?
Not until the next morning.
Approximately what time the next morning?
Approximately 5 o'clock in the morning, we received a ping that Ms. Bond's phone had turned on.
And where was that from?
It turned on at a location in Lynn. One thing we had done the previous night was to identify the biological father of Bella Bond, Joseph Amoroso. Checks were done, and it was identified that Joseph Amoroso's mother lived in Lynn. So we had a trooper sitting on that address.
And what happened when the ping came back that her phone had been turned on?
Myself, Lieutenant Murphy, Detective Ferrari from the Lynn Police Department, and Trooper Genevieve Gibbons all responded and met at that location.
And what happened when you met there?
We knocked on the door, went up to the apartment, we identified ourselves, and after a brief conversation, Rochelle Bond and Joseph Amoroso agreed to come with us to the state police offices in Chelsea.
Did you have a chance to see Rochelle Bond in the apartment in Lynn?
Yes.
How would you describe her appearance and demeanor in the apartment in Lynn?
She was extremely emotional, not fully easy to comprehend. She was very upset, crying.
Did you have any opinion as to her state of sobriety?
Yes.
What was that?
I would, in my experience, I would assume that she was either high or in withdrawals.
And what was it about her demeanor or her physical appearance that led you to that conclusion?
Her physical appearance was disheveled, extremely emotional, distraught. She was a mess.
How about Mr. Amoroso? How did he appear to you?
Agitated, nervous. He also appeared to be, not to the extent that Rochelle was, but he also was emotional.
Where did you go from Lynn?
From Lynn, we went to the state police offices where our homicide unit is housed.
And what did you do?
I interviewed Rochelle Bond with Lieutenant Robert Murphy.
Was that interview recorded in some fashion?
It was digitally audio recorded and also video recorded as well.
And approximately how long was that interview?
Approximately 45 minutes.
How would you describe Ms. Bond's demeanor during that interview?
She continued to be very emotional and distraught.
Was Mr. Amoroso interviewed?
He was.
By whom?
He was interviewed separately by Lieutenant Jack Landon, the commanding officer of the unit, and Genevieve Gibbons.
And approximately how long was that interview?
Approximately an hour.
At the conclusion of those interviews, well, let me ask you this. As you were interviewing Ms. Bond, did you give instructions to anyone with respect to what should be done with the defendant, Mr. McCarthy?
Yes.
What was that?
At that time, we were waiting for Mr. McCarthy to be available to be interviewed. There was a trooper sitting on his hospital room, and eventually he was interviewed.
Who interviewed him?
Trooper Joel Balducci.
And did he have someone with him?
He had Trooper Timothy O'Connor with him.
And if you could spell Balducci for the court reporter.
Balducci.
Was that interview recorded?
Yes, sir.
How was it recorded?
It was audio digitally recorded.
Were you briefed on that interview after it had concluded?
Yes, sir. I was in touch with Trooper Balducci during the interview.
Was he able to summarize the interview for you?
Yes, sir.
At the conclusion of those interviews, was a decision made to arrest anyone?
Yes, sir.
Who?
Both defendants were arrested.
And what was Michael McCarthy charged with at that time?
At that time, he was charged with murder.
And what was Ms. Bond charged with at that time?
Ms. Bond was charged with accessory after the fact.
To murder?
Yes.
What did you do after those interviews were conducted? And those interviews, just for the record, those were conducted on the morning of Friday, September 18th,
That's correct.
2015?
That's correct.
What did you do after that?
From the interview with Rochelle Bond, I responded. I tried to get to the hospital to participate in the interview.
Were you able to do that?
I was not.
Then what happened?
I began writing immediate search warrants for Joseph McCarthy's plumbing shop in Quincy. We also began writing search warrants for the phones that were believed to be owned by both defendants.
And when you say we, was somebody primarily involved in writing search warrants for phone records and that kind of item?
Yes.
Who was that?
The phone analytics and a lot of the forensics were managed and overseen by Trooper David Swan.
How do you spell his last name?
S-W-A-N.
Were you involved in discussions with Trooper Swan about what to do and how to do it?
Yes.
How much of the rest of Friday did those efforts take?
It went on throughout that day and most of the weekend.
On the night of Sunday, September 20th, which is the end of that weekend. Did you go to a particular location?
Yes.
Where?
I went to the Reserve Channel in South Boston.
And what were you looking for?
I was looking for evidence.
What type of evidence?
I was looking for weights and a duffel bag.
And how did you know where to look?
Based on an account that was provided to me by Rochelle Blonde.
Just a verbal account? Just a description?
Correct.
How did you go there? How did you look? Was on the night of September 20th?
Based on her account, I identified an area with access to that channel. It was dark. I just had a flashlight, and I identified an area that had access to the water.
Did you look in the water?
I tried to.
Could you see anything?
No.
Did you follow up on that information at some point after Sunday the 20th?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
The next morning, myself and Lieutenant Murphy, we were in touch with the State Police Marine Unit and Underwater Recovery Unit, and we all met at that location, and a dive was conducted.
Is that the same unit that had conducted the dives 3 months earlier over in Winthrop?
That's correct.
And where did the dive unit start their dive?
Right there in the Reserve Channel, we were able to point from the shore to the boats and the divers directly where in the water had the most likely access point from that area.
Did a diver go down?
Yes.
Who was that, if you remember?
It was Trooper Scott McKenzie.
Do you know how to spell his last name for the court report?
MacKenzie.
And who had given him direction about where to start looking?
I did.
And how long was he underwater for before he came up with something?
It was within approximately 15 minutes.
What did he come up with?
He came up with a duffel bag, and he indicated that there were weights.
Did he go back down for items?
Yes, sir.
And what did he come up with?
He recovered 2 barbell weights, free weights, and a green Army duffel bag or sea bag.
What was the condition? Did you get a chance to examine them after he brought them up?
Yes.
And what was the condition of the duffel bag?
They were pretty beat up. The bag itself was ripped.
And what about the weights?
The weights were covered in rust, and additionally they were covered in silt from the silt and dirt from the ocean floor.
Did those items? Who took custody of those items?
The State Police Crime Scene Services.
And were those items sent to the lab for testing?
The bag was sent for testing. The weights were secured as evidence.
Were they sent for any kind of testing, fingerprinting, anything like that?
No.
Why not?
The weights themselves were covered in rust. It was the surface of the weights could not support any testing or fingerprinting.
And is that a decision that you made?
It's a decision that I made based on my training experience. I also consulted with Crime Scene Services technician on the scene.
What did you do after recovering? Well, I know you didn't recover the weights, but after the weights were recovered from the reserve channel?
They were transported and secured as evidence, and I began preparing another search warrant.
For what?
For McCarthy's Plumbing Shop.
And is that one you hadn't been able to obtain over the weekend?
Yes.
How long did that take?
Within a couple of hours, the affidavit was prepared.
And was there a search conducted at the plumbing shop?
Yes, sir.
When was that?
I believe the 21st.
21st?
22nd, excuse me. May I consult my notes? I have dates.
Are you having some difficulty being sure?
I just wanted to make sure.
Please, with the court's permission.
Yes, sir. The search warrant at the plumbing shop was conducted on September 22nd.
At about what time?
It was late at night, approximately 10 p.m.
Had you, aside from your team, I'm not talking about the investigative team, but aside from that, had you discussed the search warrant at Joseph McCarthy's plumbing shop And by the way, when you say Joseph McCarthy, are you talking about Joseph McCarthy Sr. or Joseph McCarthy Jr.?
I believe the plumbing shop is owned by Joseph McCarthy Sr. It's 618 Hancock Street, Quincy.
And had you discussed with, just yes or no, had you discussed with either of them that there was going to be a search warrant? Or,
No.
well, let me ask you this. I think you've already testified that Joseph McCarthy Sr. had been interviewed when you were looking for the two defendants. Is that right?
Yes.
Were you there at the execution of the search warrant at Joseph McCarthy's plumbing shop?
Yes.
And was either Joseph McCarthy Jr. or Joseph McCarthy Sr. present at that time?
Joseph McCarthy Sr. was present.
And did he just happen to be there, or were arrangements made for him to be there?
He was there during the search warrant. He was there.
And during the execution of the search warrant, was there discussion with Mr. McCarthy about the execution of the search warrant?
Yes, sir.
In particular, was he aware, if you know, was he aware that weights were removed from the basement?
Yes, he was.
And I think I just jumped ahead, actually, but what, if anything, I apologize, Your Honor, I asked the questions in the wrong order, but what, if anything, did you recover from Mr. McCarthy's plumbing shop?
We recovered weights. We recovered York brand weights and other weights from that location.
When you say York brand weights, one York brand weight or more than one York brand weight?
One York brand weight.
And how many other weights?
I believe 2 additional weights.
And who had conversation with Mr. McCarthy Sr. about those weights?
Sergeant Scott Holland.
During the course of your investigation, did you, well, I'll come back to that. Well, during the course of your investigation, did you have conversation with Joseph McCarthy Jr.?
Yes, sir.
And are you aware whether he testified in the grand jury investigating this matter?
Yes, he did.
Did you have a conversation with him in preparation for his grand jury testimony?
Yes.
And during that conversation, was the topic of weightlifting discussed? Yes or no?
I don't recall.
After you executed the search warrant at Joseph McCarthy Sr.'s plumbing shop, what's the next thing that you did?
Second search warrant was prepared and conducted at
Where?
115 Maxwell Street.
The same apartment that you had conducted the search warrant on the 17th?
Correct.
And what specifically were you searching for?
Specifically, we wanted to secure the refrigerator and also any materials related to demonology or demons.
Was there also another physical item besides the refrigerator that was seized?
Yes, a mattress.
Whose mattress from what bedroom?
Mattress from the back bedroom, mattress, bedding, and pillows.
And are these adult-sized mattress, bedding, and pillows, or child?
It's a twin-sized mattress.
And when you say the back bedroom, you're talking about viewed from the street, it's the farthest bedroom away?
The furthest bedroom back, yes.
Were you able to recover any materials pertaining to Satanism or demonism?
Yes.
What were those materials?
They were books and I believe a notebook.
Was there additional search warrants conducted in connection with this case? I'm not talking now about for phone records, that kind of thing, but additional physical search warrants for locations?
Yes, there was a physical search conducted on the vehicle that was owned by Michael McCarthy.
What kind of vehicle was it, do you know?
It was a Chevy Cavalier.
And that's the car that you said had been found at Milton Hospital?
Correct.
And where was that search warrant conducted?
The car was transported to the South Boston Barracks, and we had it secured in a garage at that location.
And were you present for that search?
Yes.
Who conducted that search?
I conducted the search, and I also had assistance from a state police chemist.
And was that search recorded in some way?
It was documented and photographed by Crime Scene Services.
What, if anything, was done with the cell phones that you had collected from Ms. Well, let me ask you this. Let me stop for a second. Are you... Going back a bit, when Mr. Amoroso was interviewed on the 18th, did he provide police with any phones?
Yes.
How many phones at that time?
I believe at that time you provided us with one phone.
His own?
Yes.
Did he also provide you with a phone that belonged to anyone else?
Yes.
Whose?
On September 25th, he provided us with an additional phone. In addition to producing his own phone in the initial interview, did he produce anyone else's phone? He provided, on the day that we arrested Rochelle Bond, I believe we also received her phone.
From him?
Yes.
Now, you said that later he produced another cell phone. Do you recall when that was?
September 25th.
And how did you become aware that there was another cell phone to collect?
I believe he contacted us. He contacted Lieutenant Robert Murphy.
And did Lieutenant Murphy tell you what Amoroso had said?
Yes.
What did he say?
As to what Mr. Amoroso said, Mr. Deacon, that would appear to be hearsay, so it's...
I agree if there's an objection.
There is.
Did Lieutenant, just yes or no, did Lieutenant Murphy summarize his conversation with Mr. Amoroso?
Yes.
And as a result of your communication with Lieutenant Murphy, what did you do?
We re-interviewed Joseph Amoroso.
Where?
We met him. We picked him up in Lynn, and the interview was conducted in my cruiser.
And was it recorded in some fashion?
Yes, sir.
How?
It was digitally audio recorded.
And during the course of that interview, did Mr. Amoroso turn anything over to you?
Yes.
What did he turn over to you?
He turned over a small purse. It was like a mini backpack belonging to Rochelle Bont and an additional cell phone.
And just yes or no, did he tell you why he was giving you an additional cell phone? No, not just yes or no.
Yes.
Well, let me ask you, you've indicated a number of phones that you received. To go over them, you indicated, I think you testified that you received Michael Sprinsky's cell phone initially, is that right?
Correct.
You received a cell phone from Joseph Amoroso?
Correct.
Actually, let me go backwards. You received 2 cell phones from Ms. Richards?
Yes.
She indicated that one was hers and one belonged to the defendant?
Correct.
You received a cell phone from Joseph Amoroso?
Correct.
You received a cell phone from Joseph Amoroso that he indicated belonged to Ms. Bond?
Correct.
And then a week later, a second cell phone he gave you a second cell phone, is that right?
Yes.
And what was done with all those cell phones?
Search warrants were written to examine these phones, and they were transported to our forensic lab, and a forensic exam was done on these phones.
Just to be clear, did you need a search warrant to examine Mr. Sprinsky's phone?
No.
Why?
He gave me consent to look at it.
And did you need a search warrant to examine Mr. Amoroso's phone?
I do not believe we wrote a search warrant. We did have consent.
So the search warrants were for Mr. McCarthy's phones and 2 other phones turned over by Joe Amoroso?
Yes, sir.
When Mr. Amoroso turned over...
Mr. Deacon, I don't know if this is a good place to take a moment.
Sure.
It's starting a little late, but I do want you to have that break, so we'll see you in about 20 minutes.
Court, all rise, please.